We good to go?
Yep, I'll introduce you.
Okay.
Because I'm super excited that Jeff is here. I have called, and I don't even, I think I first met you through Todd Craig with NOPA, probably how I first recognized and got in touch with you, but I've talked to you and you've counseled me and you've educated me throughout over 20 years. And so when I said you had 30 years of experience and I looked at your thing, I'm like, oh, good, I was right. I knew you had a lot more time than me. And then, but just amazing professional. And Jeff and his whole team, they're Arizona appraisers, and they are just phenomenal. So I can't tell you like what a gift it is to be able to text or call and doing a listing and you have like a question, or you just want to check yourself and make sure that you're not crazy. You know, it's just wonderful to be able to reach out to you, a wealth of knowledge. So I'm excited to have you come and talk to our agents. So thank you.
All right.
Jeff Harper, thank you.
Yeah.
We got about 10 people on Zoom. So people on Zoom, if you guys have questions, feel free to chime in. And yeah, we're good to go.
And then you're sending them the documents so you can see everything
right now.
Okay, cool. So they'll have those in front of you.
All the documents are it's maybe to get conversation going. Mm-hmm. I've done a few of these, and instead of just doing a lecture format, I'd invite questions. It's really gonna only be as useful as we can make it as a team. I'll try and have some things of interest, obviously, but mostly just to kind of get us started in conversation. I did do something really interesting. Is my mom is 92, and so I was lucky enough to be her financial power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. If any of you guys walk through that stretch of life, it's exhausting. But anyway, she organizes her desk, and I don't know where she found this, but I found an appraisal from 1984 on the home that I grew up in. And this was, I guess, just after I moved out, and they refinanced. But is that a camera or just a voice?
That's a camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's a 360 camera, so you can move around the room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so this is interesting. This is the entire appraisal.
On one page.
So 2 photos and one handwritten page.
Wow.
That's it. And then a part of your life that I don't live in is this is the title insurance policy.
Oh, wow.
And so it's got this cool gold sticker. And that's it. That's the documentation.
Yeah, taken up here in Phoenix yet?
No, that's from Tucson.
Tucson?
Yeah. Yeah, but I just thought it's really amazing.
Did she have a copy of her deed she had recorded?
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
She might have it, but I just thought
The letters.
life is changed. I
That
think
might be part of that whole book.
Well, yeah, because back then they would send the deed to the homeowner once the loan was paid off, and
right.
you had to take it to the recorder's office. So we had a client that forgot to do that, didn't do that, lost their deed, and then when we went to sell their home, that lien had never been released. So it was a First Interstate Bank, which is no longer in existence. Wells Fargo took it over, so it was a little bit of a pickle, but we got it closed, and they had 90 days afterwards to get that taken care of.
Well, it was a simpler time. I think most of my reports, and mine are short. You know, if you ever have to get a narrative report or a commercial report, they get paid by the pound. And so, but ours are only about 30-35 pages now to do what they did here. I was looking at it. I think he missed some things, but it was amazing to see what we've done. And so appraisal has changed a lot. And let me get over here to my some of the things that are some of the most recent changes. This isn't, maybe you wouldn't have questions, but it's just information for you. What somebody else in the market who's trying to, make things go just like you guys are putting up with. And so we're getting AI generated correction requests. Yeah. And so our reports are being reviewed, with AI technology. And so some of the things that we get asked to do are just they drive you absolutely nuts. And I had one yesterday. I came in and I thought I'd just read some of the stuff. And it's appraiser to update appraisal as follows. And so based on the stated conditions, appraisers provide the market data or equivalent used to determine the following adjustments. These include observable numerical data in the report to understand how the market reaction behind the adjustments beyond commentary in the appraisal on page 12 and 13. So that means I already talked about it.
Yeah.
So now they want and I use paid sales, and that was so so I'm supposed to now expound on why I made the adjustments for pool. That's all I know. And so instead of telling them that we use paired sales and that we used a study from the University of Florida that says pools in the Southwest are generally 8 to 13% of the value of the home. We had to put paired sales, 4 or 5 pages of paired sales data in the report, and then a more specific citation to the, meta study that they did from the University of Florida. Same thing for sites. And so I thought maybe that's a good jumping off point. And then they went on and they asked me to say, why didn't you include these comparables in the analysis? And so they gave me 3 or 4 other comparables that I didn't use. I gave them 6, but they didn't know why I used those 6 and not the 3 that they wanted to give me. So then I have to go look those up and say, okay, well, here's why I think my comparables are better than your comparables. I considered them, didn't use them because I got better data.
So are you arguing with a computer?
In some to some degree, yeah. And so the lenders that I really like have, or the AMCs, actually have real people that proof the AI generated review and say, okay, well, that's nonsense. And so some of those, I don't ever see a lot of these kind of things.
Wow.
But in this particular one, I got the deal. And so then you spend a bunch of time doing that. And how much is a pool worth? And
Like if you were to just buy it?
an average pool in Gilbert, Arizona, right? We're at $550. Is that about the average price in Gilbert?
Yeah, it's probably more than that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Well, a
that's
pool
really
itself
close to
would be around,
That's
50
pretty current.
50 grand.
550 is good.
I think it's pretty close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
average would be 556.
So how do we derive a value of a pool? I mean, that's a good talking point.
Well,
I don't know,
if
to be honest.
If it's already, okay, if it's brand new and we know that they're building them between 50 and 75,000 now. I mean, based on the kind of pool that most people are putting in nowadays. I can't imagine 10% of that. That would be worse than before. Used to be what? It was like 10,000 you would give for a pool.
And so it depends on the context, on the house that you have. And so if we're selling in a entry-level neighborhood at $250 to $350, I'm probably not going to make. Well, hopefully they don't put it in an $85,000 pool with the beach entry and all that kind of stuff, because they're just throwing good money after bad.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like cars, if you get something that's all these aftermarket add-ons and stuff like that, you tend to not get much of that back in the marketplace. But pools, at least what I've observed is the cost of a pool is like almost doubled in the last couple of years. It's gone from where I was thinking 35. Seems like yesterday it was $35,000 and $40,000 to get a pool built, and now even going through builders, it's like entry-level pool packages are 55, 60 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And,
It's really ridiculous.
And so what do we adjust? Because I've adjusted forever. I've been doing this for a long time. It seemed like 12 to 18,000 was, depending on how nice the pool was, with a spa, maybe a little more. That's all changed. And so pool adjustments can be really significant. I did a paired sales in the neighborhood that averaged $360,000, $370,000. So not fancy. And it was telling me about $39,000 for a pool. What do you think? Is that crazy?
Yes,
You think it is?
yes.
So that was the value you were able to give it in the appraisal?
That's
was
what the data
39,000?
said. That's what the data said. And so what's
Yeah, that
13%?
seems super crazy.
What's 13% of 350? I mean, that's well, that's gonna be $40,000 or thereabouts.
45.50, no.
And so the high end of the study from Florida way back in the day that said 8 to 13% would support something at 40,000 or a little more. And then the paired sales that I ran supported 39,000. I'm not used to giving those kind of adjustments, but should I? If the data, I had good sized data set. And so that's how I get to some adjustments. A lot of times you guys say, how in the world do you get to your adjustments? And so
Excuse me.
I had 80 sales without pools, you know, with a 500 square foot variation I allowed, and I constrained the garage count. And so then I had 80 without pools and about 35 with pools. And you look at the average price on both, and there was a spread of about $40,000.
Wow.
And so that's how I came to that pool adjustment. So sometimes I get asked in these situations, well, how do you know what's your pool adjustment? Well, it's all going to be different because now if we're in $1 million neighborhood, numbers are way bigger. Yeah. And I think in a more expensive neighborhood, a pool is expected.
Mhm.
So in a $300,000 neighborhood, a pool's kind of sort of expected. Less than that, people don't want them because they got to pay $150 a month for maintenance. Yeah, and that's important to them.
That went up too.
Mm-hmm. And so, so I find that in the entry level pools, as a percentage of the cost, it goes way down because the people just, hey, that's not so important to us. We're not willing to pay for a pool instead of eat out, you know, a few times a month or something like that.
Yeah.
And so in the high end, I think it gets a bigger percentage of the cost, and the cost just keeps skyrocketing. I was asked to support site differences. How are we gonna, in a neighborhood of 8,000 square foot lots, what's a $12,000 cul-de-sac lot worth?
Yeah.
How do you guys figure that?
I just go, it's worth it, right? And then the guy goes, yeah, perfect. I'm like, good.
Well, I look at it differently.
I'm like, trust me, it's worth it.
If that lot goes to the very narrow to the front, there's no parking in the front. And it goes to the back.
That's true.
And that's a different lot. Now, if it goes reverse to that, now you have plenty of parking out front. Is that classified yours? No.
Yeah.
It's public street, so I mean, your neighbor can park in front of your house or whatever, but it's different. So I have to look at that as well, as if I'm gonna go and estimate the value of that home.
So it's like you're talking about the functionality of the
Yes.
So yeah, you could have a 10 by 1200 lot. That's not, you know, unless you're a bowler.
And Gilman has a lot of those pie shape that go like that.
Yeah.
Very small in the front, but ginormous in the back. Big lot.
Kind of a mullet.
Yeah.
Those are the ones you need that pass through garages into the back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or if you could set the house back. And sometimes the builders really screw up
Yes.
and do an awful job at maximizing the utility of the lot.
Yes.
And so you got to look at that kind of stuff. But so here's how I look at sites is an 8,000 square foot lot. Let's use $80,000. So how much is that per foot? It's $10 a foot. So let's say we're about $10 a foot. So if I have 12,000 square feet, I should just add $40,000. No, probably not. And so in appraisal, there's two terms for excess land. Well, one is excess land and one is surplus land. So it's extra land. So it's land that you need to have that is over and above the minimum for the zoning requirement. All right, I need 7,500 or 8,000 square feet. And I've got 12,000 square feet, I've got 8,000 square feet. The surplus, the extra 4,000, you can't put a separate house on it. It'll violate zoning.
Okay.
So surplus land is if it's just extra land that's not, you can't be used independently.
Mm.
Excess land is if, hey man, I've got 18,000 square feet and both have good frontage on the street. And so I could break this dude up into two pieces really easily. And that's a concept called excess land, because it is capable of independent use. That usually, okay, that's going to be worth a little more than surplus land. And what I always explain, how I explain it is, I have a primary building envelope that satisfies zoning. Anything beyond that is just, it's surplus, and it's not worth as much. It gives you a little more privacy. It gives you more yard to mow or more gravel to weed or whatever.
But it's not really.
But yeah, it's not capable of a lot of different uses. Maybe you could put a shed back there or a shop back there or something like that, whatever zoning allows. But you can't, it's not as useful as that primary lot.
Yeah.
And so the value of it diminishes. And I usually go at least 50% less.
Really?
So I might adjust $5 a foot for that extra lot size. Developers, be careful. Developers are by far more capable and have better results than the secondary market in getting dollars for lot premium stuff.
Unless you're Trump right now.
Okay, fair enough.
Then they're gonna question your appraisal.
Yeah, right. But I mean, the developers usually, they put, I look at some of these lots and I go, how in the world, a lot premium, what's different about this lot than every other lot premium?
And some of them are expensive. You'd be like,
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And they'll tell me mountain views and I'm looking at it and I'm going,
See the top.
yeah,
They do corner lots.
everybody in the valley has that mountain.
Yeah.
You know, because you can see the mountains way out there. And so developers, though, you know, in a hot market especially, they can kind of make up lot premiums. And then when you get it in the secondary market, you're going to try and match that. You're going to struggle.
Yeah.
Just telling you.
Resale.
Yeah.
For resale. And I would say that's true just about, another interesting thing is we're kind of at a pivot where we came out of this incredibly hot market. And then you guys, you're down from your high from what I was looking at. But if it becomes a buyer's market, any premium, any preferential item that the people put in, I see those really shrink in the return in the marketplace.
Mm.
So lot premiums or really nice flooring upgrades or a kitchen upgrade or something like that. When the market's hot and it's a seller's market, they can say, yeah, we paid $40K for the, you know, kitchen upgrade and another, you know, 40 for the 2 bathroom upgrades, and we want our 80. And people will say, shoot, I don't have to live through the dust. I'll give you 100.
Mm-hmm.
But when the market's bad and it becomes a buyer's market, they're going to say, yeah, but I don't even like granite. You know, I want quartz, and the color you chose on the tile that's not me at all.
Yeah.
I'll give you 20 grand.
Yeah.
And you'll say, sold, because there's nobody else who wants to buy it. So you see those preference items and those upgrades, the value of those in the secondary market really get compressed, I think, if we head into a down market. So those are some things that I've observed that might be of interest. I gave you guys, go ahead, yeah.
So, on one of my listings, a couple months ago, it was right off the street.
Uh-huh.
And the appraiser, devalued the home by like 35,000 due to that. And we ended up doing like an appeal,
Uh-huh.
you know, to try to increase the value, and she just did not want to. She said, no, it's like, because it's on the street, the value is not there. So I want to know, like, should I have fought for that harder? Or to me, I thought maybe about like 10 to 15. that's what my thought was, but not 35,000.
What was the price of the house?
The price of the house was
About,
$3
so 10%.
347.
She
That's a
knocked
lot.
you 10%. That's a
Mhm.
big. My experience is that's an aggressive adjustment for traffic. Now, if it was bad traffic,
Which it really wasn't.
Yeah, what was it next to when you say traffic?
There was it was other houses like around.
Was it a freeway?
No, it was on 35th Avenue in Bethany. And so there's houses all around in that
Shopping
area.
centers too, right?
Shopping centers were going to be like half a mile that way, and then I would say like 2 blocks this way.
so here's the appraisal process on that, just so you'll know how to maybe look at that.
Yeah,
Is, so traffic exposure, power lines, those are, like, if you're doing FHA and I don't address that, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah. okay.
So they're bound to say something about it, because FHA is gonna follow them up and they're gonna look with satellite imagery. And they're gonna say, hey, you're on a street, you didn't say anything about it,
Mhm.
what gives? So, and another interesting, I'll eventually answer your question. But just FYI is the forms have drop downs that we use, so we don't have to type traffic or power lines. And
Oh, that's negative.
so those are negatives. And those are negatives that are seen often enough in the market that they're in the drop down menu.
Yeah, well,
Okay?
especially up here and probably in Tucson too,
Yeah.
when you have those big 511. I'm trying to think if that's what they call them, but they look like towers, and there's like one after another, like you could drive through. They're
Yeah.
huge. In
And,
Peoria, there's a lot.
So those are the transmission lines.
Mm.
And so that's a word too, is transmission lines are worse because they're high voltage and they're big and people freak out and think they're gonna
Yes,
go
yeah.
a third eye and all
You
that.
got the cancer.
So some people get cancer, right, and all that, and some of it's warranted. Cell towers, that's another thing.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
real.
That's a negative?
Yeah, and so
How close do they have to be
Wow.
to be considered a negative?
So there's interesting things, there's studies that'll show you, okay, if I go out 500 feet, or if I go out 1,000 feet, same with railroad tracks. Railroad tracks are big things. And so, all those, things, the proximity to traffic, you could do traffic count studies and things like that. Those are available to you. And so if you're gonna argue with them, let me get into how they appraise that. So I see any of these things, a highway exposure, transmission lines, just a regular street, I have to call it out. So it's in the analysis now, and I say traffic exposure. A good appraisal is going to be where a word called bracketing, where I have this characteristic about the house, and I need to find something else, some other comparable that's got the same characteristic. Because if I don't, that means I'm adjusting all of my comparables in the analysis, and there's no way to cross-check it. So hopefully in the report that you got, the appraisal report, they had, ones on traffic are less common. So maybe they had 3 sales with no traffic exposure and one sale with. And if they've done a good job on all of their adjustments and the market works, if you believe in efficient market theory, and I think the real estate market's pretty efficient at the end of the day, all of a sudden you've got no traffic, say at 380, let's say. So 380 no traffic, 380 no traffic, 380 no traffic, 350 traffic. And I've done a good job on all my adjustments. So now all of a sudden my own appraisal is telling me I got to drop about 30 grand, and traffic exposure is about 30 grand, which is almost 10%. In my experience over the years tells me that's a big adjustment for moderate traffic.
I don't even really see, you said 35th Avenue in Bethany?
So what if,
right?
Sorry, 30th Avenue in Bethany.
what if
So
you,
that's like around Grand Canyon, it is close to the 17, yeah. So,
but so what if you like on hers, so what if the other comps or comparables that they used don't have where they're on a street, like a main street or something like that?
So that's a weakness in the appraisal.
Okay.
So if you didn't bring anything that had, say there's no street ones, but there's one with power lines, big transmission line, you think, okay, I don't want to hear the traffic noise. I don't want to be exposed to the carbon monoxide associated with it. And I also wouldn't want to be close to a high voltage power line. They're not the same, but they're kind of similar. And so they could use that. But they're open to challenge if they didn't have another comp with traffic, because then it's very arbitrary.
Yeah,
And so you can say, how did you derive a $35,000 adjustment for traffic? What do you base that on? I don't see it in the report. I don't see it in your comps. And I don't see it in an addendum comment that says, hey, we did an analysis that was outside of our comparable search area, but we were able to find 5 comps with traffic and 15 without that are all kind of similar. And it looks like this is where it is. On that, if you're on a heavily trafficked area, and that's why I've got, on my computer, I've got a drop down that shows me, hey, I can go to a traffic count website. And so you can, anywhere you want, it'll say, hey, this has got 25,000 cars a day coming over it. This has only got 7,000 cars a day. And you wouldn't want to say the impact's the same.
yeah,
You know, they're probably different. At the end of the day, the best way you could do it is bring new information to the appraiser, sorry, and say, they weren't current, but I found one that was a 1.5 years old that was on the same street, back to the same traffic, and the market's, you know, gone up a little bit then, but if it sold for $290, but back then the market was selling for $280. And so the difference isn't nearly 30,000. The difference, and you could convert it to a percentage, you know, if you wanted to. The difference was more like 3%. The difference wasn't 10%.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what to say I've never screwed up like that, it would probably be an error, but you would hope that, especially when the market's not so robust and busy, that you would have time to do a little more work and say, okay, we don't have many sales, so I don't have a lot to choose from.
yeah,
So I'm going back in time when there were more sales, and I'm converting that into today's dollars, because we can chart that the market's up 11% from 2 years ago.
let's see.
You know, whatever it is, you can do that. You can go back in time and use a percentage, and then you know, convert that into today. And 10% is big.
Yeah. And the thing is that there was 3 houses down in the same street. There was a home that sold, if I remember correctly, I think it was like back in March. It was semi-renovated. My clients weren't renovated. It was just,
Yeah.
you know, well-maintained home.
Yeah.
And they sold it for like $390.
Yeah. So you were allowing for the lack of renovation and stuff.
I'm sorry?
You were allowing for yours being a little inferior on
yeah.
the update.
Yeah, and so we priced it accordingly. We got, you know, offers above asking price, and then some seller concessions onto it. But she dramatically dropped it, and
So
you know,
did you keep your deal together or did you lose it?
no, we kept our deal together. But obviously, my seller was frustrated and very upset because he's like, "Shit, like I feel like I just missed out."
Well, so another thing to think about there is it's not related to the adjustment specifically, but it's called conditions of sale. And that's something that you guys can always share with the appraiser.
Can we?
Like the
Oh, so if we're giving
investment
if we're giving a $20,000 concession or something like that.
Oh, well, I need to, we'll talk about concessions.
Okay.
Because that's a big deal. But conditions of sale, as far as I'm talking about it, is, hey, I had the market, I put it on the market. In the first 3 days, I have the offer that we have, and I have 2 written backups, and I have 3
That's a good
backups
idea.
sitting there. And so, because I go in,
Demand to show it.
yeah, because the appraiser's going to go in there and they're going to say, well, what idiot did you get to pay $350 for this?
Yeah,
Just because you found some knucklehead from, you know,
They don't
LA who
understand
just
the
sold their home
context
for $4 million. They don't know value here, and so they pay too much. But if all of a sudden you say, wait a minute, in 3 days, I have 7 offers,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's telling
I
me,
didn't know that that was relevant.
that makes a big
That's awesome.
difference, because all of a
Yeah.
sudden I'm going, wait a minute, that's,
There's 4
One
people
person-
willing to pay.
Yeah.
one person isn't that convincing, but 7 people all of a sudden who are all out
Right.
house shopping and have looked around and they're ready to drop 350 grand. Usually they're thinking pretty hard about those decisions.
How do we share that?
Well, you, when the guy calls for an appointment,
Okay.
hopefully they call, even if you put key safe vacant on your listing or whatever. They just want to make sure utilities are on, anything about the property. Hopefully they ask you guys some questions.
Normally, the appraisers that have done, some of them haven't, but some of them have, they'll email me and they'll be like, hey, I'm gonna be doing it,
Yeah.
we'll schedule the day or whatever, and they're like, some of them will literally ask, is there any other stuff
Yeah.
you want to give me? And then I'll send them like my comps and all that.
Yeah.
Too, but I didn't think about sending that stuff with them too, and
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's compelling.
yeah, no, that is true.
And I'll put that in my, my narrative addendum.
Right.
We have to comment on the contract and everything. And I'll say, hey, the subject sold for this. And when it's bad news, I'll say the market didn't fully support the sales price. And then I'll usually try to sneak in, and, maybe the fact that they gave $40,000 for an interest rate buy down had something to do with it. All right, because, that happens, right? And so, they didn't drop the price. They kept the price where it was, and the only way they could sell it was to give somebody,
Yeah.
this huge concession for financing assistance. And so you really didn't sell it for $350.
Yeah,
Sold
which
it
is
for
why
$310.
you look at the other MLSs and it shows whether there were
Concessions.
concessions, yeah. 'Cause you have to-
Yeah.
Do we need to show proof of those contracts?
If I would imagine in some cases, somebody would want to see them. I don't. I want to know about them, but I'll ask, any written? Yeah, I got 3 written. Good. And this isn't the highest one. So the more information like that, it's good for me to know. Because if I'm going to go in front of the Board of Appraisal,
Yeah,
I want to know why, Jeff, why did you, appraise it here? And I'm going to say, well, okay, I did a traffic analysis and I decided that the traffic impact was about 4%. It was, wasn't just a secondary neighborhood street, with a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. It was a 45-mile speed limit with divided and all that. So it had a what is it, a noise barrier up. So I didn't think it was terrible, but it amounted to something. And then the realtor did inform me that they sold it in 3 days, and they had 3 verbal, backups, and they had 2 additional written backups, waiting for this deal. And so, the market was speaking through that, and that's why I went a little bit above the predominant for the area. It's just something else for me to say reasonably why I landed where I landed.
yeah,
And so, and I'm looking, I'm sorry, but it's a CYA world, right? I mean, I'm looking for what's going to protect me. So here's what I'm fearful of. Everybody's been calling for the market to decline. I don't know that it ever will. But if it does, then what happens is they go hunting for my insurance policy. And so they're going to look out for any difficult appraisals. And they're going to say, wow, anybody who got foreclosed on for one reason or another, they bought an ARM. They had an interest rate buy down. All the lenders are saying, let's do this interest rate buy down and refinance in 3 years, 2 years, or whatever it's done to refund. And when we got in trouble is when everybody played that game and the rates stayed elevated and up. And then everybody with an ARM had to refinance into a really high rate. They couldn't do it. That's going to happen commercial.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. Because we're in 30 years.
residential side probably not so much, because
Not so
they
much.
have to qualify for the higher rate,
But
but then they get the buy down, yeah.
But FYI, I'm looking down the road
Well, yeah,
to say, I still want to do this for a few more years. And I need to be able to defend my conclusions. So the more you can help me defend my conclusions, the better. Some appraisers are really sensitive and they'll say, let me do my job. And they don't want your information. They should want your information because you guys are the guys out there interfacing.
Yeah.
with the buyers. You know, it's in a stock market analogy, you're the market maker. You're the floor guy. And so if I really want to understand the market, I should want to talk to those people. And so just remember, you control access to your listing. So if you have traffic in the future, but you don't think it's really
Start
bad,
showing it,
I would know that's going to be a difficulty.
Yeah.
And maybe do the work that a lazy appraiser is not willing to do. And say, okay, I know the last 6 months there were no comps on the same street with traffic exposure. So don't just guess that it's 35,000. Why don't we go back and look a couple of years in the same neighborhood, or find something, you know, you can do those search parameters where you can, what I do is I kind of zoom in on what I think is a similar street. And I'll do a long rectangle that goes for a mile or two around that street. That just includes the lots that back on either side. And I'll try and find sales that occurred in those. And sometimes you can do that. And so in Yuma, it's on Avenue A, B, and C. You can do that, or on 16th and 24th. You can do those kind of searches for 8th, and you can find the traffic ones. And it takes more time. But it might have, you know, if spending an extra 30 minutes to do that saved you.
That additional.
Yeah.
Okay.
so, someone on Zoom does have a question, I'll get to that, but,
Sure.
so is there like when you guys do these appraisals, is there like a national system that you're putting it into for like your association? So like, could another appraiser find an appraisal from another property?
No,
Okay.
but what you're saying is really interesting. And here's another reason that we're constrained.
To see how they
Where you guys
evaluate
are.
it.
Fannie Mae has a database.
Okay.
And so the uniform appraisal database, I think is UAD. And so they look at all of my appraisals that I've done. And let's say I put a comparable in that I use in this appraisal that I had used 4 months ago. And I say something different about the comp this time that I didn't say last time. I'll get a note from Fannie Mae that said, hey, last time you said that had neutral views, and this time you're saying it has traffic exposure. What gives? You need to be more consistent. And if it's egregious, they can really penalize you. Or what they can say is they'll say, hey, you call this property a C3. Have you guys seen the condition ratings? I included that in your handout.
Oh,
Is the condition ratings. It used to be fair, poor, fair, average, good, you know, excellent. But everything in the world was average.
which paper is that on?
It's
Oh,
on
I see it.
Yeah,
the definitions.
Okay.
definitions. But what they'll do is, and the reason why they did this was exactly for what you just asked, is they'll go, hey, your peers called that a C3, and you're calling it a C4. Why? And so then you have to explain to Fannie why you're different than your peers. And so that's how we're checked.
I see.
You know, usually it's not somebody getting my entire appraisal, but it's getting this consolidation of data
I see.
in one place, and they look, and so it's an amazing thing. And so they don't do it as much. When it first came out, man, I got all this stuff, and I said, well, quite frankly, I don't care what my peers say.
When you're talking
Big
about
big
the
ball.
database, it reminded me of, remember we've had a few deals in the last few years where you would start a loan, an appraisal with one lender, it wouldn't appraise.
Right?
They would want to switch it to another lender, but there was an FHA number given with that.
So you
home.
couldn't-
And they used to say, well, they do say you can't,
Transfer.
sometimes they said you could transfer, but you had to have permission of the lender, I think. But there was a question on whether or not you could do a new appraisal. And my question always was, I thought that you couldn't do a new appraisal for a certain amount of time.
I thought that was.
And I,
FHA.
yeah, and I want to say that there was an issue with one of our deal. Yeah, there was a deal where maybe the appraisal was fine, but they made us do another one. And I'm like, well, what about the other one? And I'm like, isn't there like a database where it's red flagging? And they were like, well, they say that, but no. And I was like, what are you talking about? That
Or
wasn't
you do it
possible.
up to what, 6 months or whatever?
Yeah, it was within like a month and they switched it.
Sometimes it's on flips. So if you retransact the house within 6 months, FHA says we have to have a second appraisal on it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. Usually, the appraisal follows the property.
Right.
And so I get a lot of lenders who say, hey, they don't do this anymore, but for the longest time, they said, could you change that into our name?
Yeah.
And that's not necessary. It's just, it transfers with the property. So you should be able to use the appraisal with a different lender on that. And you are stuck for 120 days with it, which is.
Is that with only FHA or any appraisal?
No, I think that's just with FHA.
Okay.
Usually on conventional side though, if you have a buyer and you get this lousy appraisal back and you want to change it, you're going to really struggle to do that with that same lender.
Yeah, okay. So,
You're even on the conventional side. And I might point this out that my experience in appealing appraisals, it's really tough. Doesn't go well generally.
I've only done it twice.
I have
They
two
changed the
and I,
price.
did they? Okay.
Yeah,
the appraisers work.
I feel like I did one too, and we
I
got,
tried and we didn't get it.
no, one increased the value by, it was 52K, and then one increased it by
the lowest appraisals.
22.
That's remarkable. And let me tell you why I would say that. Don't think that's normal.
No, I didn't think
Yeah.
it was normal either. I was like praying, I'm like, it was God.
Wow, that's
So,
wild.
so if the guy changed, let's say it was a $500,000 house that he changed 52K.
It was on an $800,000 home.
Okay, so that's still a big percentage. That's still 7% or whatever it is, 6 or 7%. The reason I wouldn't look forward to that happening a lot is because the guy basically said, I'm a moron. I missed it the first time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, that's
So my first run at this was really deficient.
Right.
And so what I've seen happen is when guys change big like that, I've seen them get removed from panels,
really.
which is a big deal.
Panels.
An AMC.
Oh, they
So-
don't want to use them anymore.
Yeah, so
Interesting.
the panels are, we talked about having lunch with people. I don't go into mortgage branches anymore. I try and schmooze
Like, I don't care.
the AMCs,
Hmm.
appraisal management companies.
Yeah, so now instead of schmoozing the agents, you guys just schmooze the AMCs.
Right. Well, because sometimes they deal with multiple lenders.
Love it. Oh,
I
yeah,
see.
for sure.
And so it could be my way into a lot of work, hopefully. I mean, I'm in business just like you guys. I'm trying
Right,
to
yeah.
maximize my,
You like making money?
yeah, believe it or not. But if you change dramatically,
Wow.
you're really indicting yourself
Hmm.
on the first go round. And people have been removed because of that. So I'm gonna do I'll change a little,
Yeah.
but I'm really trying to defend my work.
Yeah.
One, because
Hopefully it's just right in the first place.
hopefully it's right in the
Yeah.
first place.
So that's why most most appraisers say no. Like I stand by
That
my
makes
work,
sense,
I'm
yeah.
not going
Yeah.
to appeal it.
That could be too, yeah, even if they do it wrong, they might be like, so I'm not changing it now.
Yeah,
Well, and then for you to pursue them is gonna take a lot of time.
Yeah,
yeah.
It doesn't make you money. It just, it serves justice. If you think it's for justice or revenge motives, no matter what out, it's just how hard up are you to do that?
yeah. Just
And it
depends on-
does, FYI, it makes life really miserable to hear from the state. So,
You even
we all
hear
know
from
that.
the-
yeah, you can hear from the state. And if I hear from the state, it's a nightmare. I mean, you talk about defending your appraisal. I'm good, because they control my license.
Yeah,
And so, I'm gonna, you just gave me a 2-week vacation studying up on lots of things.
See, now I feel bad.
Well, I mean, that's
you have to do what's best
It has
for you.
merit.
Yeah.
But yeah, if someone just,
Best
if a listing agent just lists a house at a stupid price and then
Yeah,
some random person does decide, yeah, I'll buy it for that, I don't
Yeah.
care. It doesn't make any sense. I mean,
And
what are you gonna do?
they do ferret out.
Yeah,
you know, the silly ones. But the ones that get through, if there's merit to it, yeah, it's no fun. And so if you have, I would say, try upfront to anticipate problems.
Yeah,
Traffic could be a problem, you know, whatever else, I mean,
so you're saying if there's traffic during the day, then you have the appraiser go at a time where there's less. Yeah, sorry, the house is gonna be available until this time, so you have to really
Yeah.
come this time.
yeah, and, yeah, no,
Like
and
when
if
you
there's
do
a
They
backup
don't work
sector,
in that at 10 PM Sunday.
have cookies or something.
Someone, when we, what's it called? What's it called when you do the interest rate thing?
Buy down.
Find out.
No, when you refinance, why could I not figure out how to say refinance? When we refinanced, she came to our house at like 6 or 7 o'clock. And it was so weird. And I was like, what the heck? And I was like, okay. Well, she was super nice and she walked the house, did the whole thing. And I was like, what the heck? And then she left and then, you know, it was fine because obviously like we refied in the middle of like, you know, the pandemic. So it's like,
Oh, low, 2%, 3%.
yeah, so it didn't really matter how much the house was worth. It was going to be more than what we bought it for anyway. So, but it was weird. She came like super late at night, and I was like, "Is that normal?"
Yeah, but you
Make her
know,
happy, give her food.
I did. I was like, we talked to her forever.
well, that's what you do. You have something really
Please.
good cooking on the stove, and but aerial views are gonna. I'm worried about you a little bit as the borrower,
Yeah,
but I'm worried more about the lender and the underwriter. I'm worried most about the state.
yeah,
That's really, you know, I'm working.
because that's what you care
I'm
about.
working for the lender,
Because if the state says something, then you can't even do business anymore.
right?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm wrong,
Well, yeah, just don't be wrong. You know.
exactly.
No pressure.
But anticipate. You're gonna, that really helps and understand if you're have a lack of comps in the neighborhood and say, okay, there really wasn't anything like my house here, but I went 2.5 miles over there. It's a really similar neighborhood. The same builder was in there and the same, you know, and I was able to find that. And that's what I priced it to. And lo and behold, the market thought that was reasonable. And I got a buyer in the second week. And then I got some additional interest after that. And so whatever you can do, because what if I just don't want to go 2.5 miles to run out of comp?
Yeah.
And I want to use this crap that's across the street, it's gonna be bad for you. I mean, and sometimes the same builder, it seems like they have the one I'm thinking of is they got their base model, then they got their signature series, and then they got their luxury model, and they all look pretty similar from the outside.
Yeah.
But some of them are really the cost to construct has gone way up, and maybe the lots are 1,500 feet or 2,000 feet bigger on average. And some of those subtleties, if you guys are really familiar with an area, an appraiser who's trying to cover Phoenix, they could miss, you know, those are some subtleties that you will know. And this is why I use these comps to price my property. Because that neighborhood also had the 10,000 square foot lots. And it had the upgraded, you know, courts with the waterfall edge, standard, you know, and all this jazz. But none of these had that.
So is that something
That I
like
sold recently.
like if we're, you know, we get a listing and, you know, you get the ones where there's like nothing that's sold recently and you're like, I don't know what the price is at. Cause like, I guess I'm just like, you know, how far out like is a reasonable amount to go to kind of get some other examples of like what it would be like? Cause sometimes I'm always like, I don't want to go that. Cause at that point it's like, you know, and it's in a different neighborhood and how much of an effect does that have on how accurate it's going to be, you know, because if I'm in this one neighborhood and like I had one in Casa Grande, and in Casa Grande there had been like 3 sales recently, and they were all right around like there had only been like one that was really recent, and the rest were like 6 months old. But then also too, I was trying to like they have this one neighborhood right here, and then like a few, you know, roads down, there's a whole nother neighborhood. And I'm like, can I use stuff from that neighborhood even if the house is similar? But like it was kind of hard to like determine. So I'm like, I don't know how to.
That was tough, like about 2 years ago to get.
Yeah, when nothing was selling.
Asked
and
around,
it's
there
like-
was nothing over there, and the prices, because nothing was selling, they hadn't jumped up like they have now.
Yeah, is there like a reasonable amount, like that you're like, that'd probably be a reasonable either time frame and like distance to go away from the house, or like,
So I'm gonna take a longer answer.
oh, that's good.
The lenders wanna see stuff within a half a mile. Typically, a couple of comps in 6 months, typically. With the old rule was within 15% of the size of the house.
Okay.
Those are all out the window.
Oh,
Well, no, they're good.
Well, I guess I'll just steal it.
They're good rules of thumb,
Yeah,
but, so I'm trying to do that because I know that their checklist all has kind of that
Yeah.
stuff. But when you have a difficult one like what you're describing, then you break all the rules. Then you say, okay, I gotta have one from my neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna do a neighborhood search and I'm gonna go back 2 years and hopefully I
Yeah.
find something.
really.
Yeah. You know, and if I find something that's 18 months old, I'm gonna plug it in. It may be my comp 4 or 5, but it's gonna be there. But it helps me have a reference on the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Then what you do is, you guys know the market, then you're gonna find, okay, this is across the highway, but it's similar access to the highway, it's similar buyers. Think of it this way. There's a rule of substitution. That's what we call it in appraisal. So the house that you're selling is the house that I want, but it's already got a contract, but it's got everything that I want. Where's the next house located that's gonna fit that bill? And you're gonna say, hey, well, okay, it's in that neighborhood, a mile and a half away, further than I want to go. But it's got similar prox to the, industry and office and employment. And it's got similar access to the highway and shopping. And it's by the same builder. It's built around the same time frame. It's the same stuff. It just breaks this rule of going across the highway and a mile and a half away.
Yeah.
And so you start breaking rules. You go back further in time than you'd like to. You start going further away than you'd like to. But I still think my goal at the end of the day is to have something, no matter how lousy of a comp it is, in the neighborhood. Because you can correct for, say, what if I have the same model that sold 3 years ago? What if I have the same, my house sold 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And they haven't done a blasted thing to it in 3 years. Well, now all I have to do is say, what's happened in the market?
Yeah. They've never changed it yet.
Yeah, so there's lots of ways to cross. You just want to be able to come at it from different angles.
I see.
You don't want to have everything in this.
That's true. That's a good point. So once you
Yeah.
find new comps, then if like they never upgraded the house, just look at what the market,
yeah.
what the percentage, it went up 29%. Okay, add 20% to that, or
When I'm defending that methodology, I'll go to this neighborhood and say, okay, the average price per foot over here is, $220 a foot. And the average price of my neighborhood is $200 a foot. And so I've got, it's 10%. So I would adjust. I'm using this different neighborhood, exact house, and I'm going to adjust down for location 10%. Because that's what the data is telling me. So you can do that. And going across big highways, railroad tracks, canals, things like that are significant.
What about VA and FHA versus conventional? So like,
They're getting more and more similar.
oh, so the bedrooms versus bedrooms.
Yeah, I would say all those methodologies hold.
Um,
On all that
I
stuff.
have 2 questions on here.
Yeah.
How much does it affect? There's not much of a synopsis here of what exactly. They just said solar and windows, but like, how do you kind of evaluate that kind of stuff?
I think windows. So I did a survey. I'm part of a business leads group in Tucson, so it's 100 business owners. And I gave them hypotheticals. One was energy efficiency. So I said, if you had $50,000 to spend on these different things, active solar, new windows, a pool and barbecue area outside, a new kitchen, new bath and tile, or a workshop, those scenarios. The one that returned the least amongst 100 people anyway, was energy efficient things.
Okay. I mean, I feel like that kind of makes sense.
It's really backwards, but one way you can help me out as an appraiser is to say, hey, we're saving $245 a month.
So really, we should just be more.
Well,
That's everything you say is making sense. I'm like, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
well,
You know.
doing finding other homes that have active solar owned,
Yeah.
then you guys know that, right? So whether they're financing it, whether it's leased, no value.
All right, I wanna know where,
Oh,
am I putting that in the listing, that you're gonna find me?
No, you give
That
it
it's
to them.
owned
They
or
contact
leased?
you.
No, I'll know that it's under lease, so what about windows versus noise factor versus,
Right.
Put that in the remarks,
you
in the
give it-
private remarks.
Yeah.
You can try.
I mean, I want you to tell me where I can put that in my listing, that you're gonna see that.
Well, you could give it to them when they contact you.
Well, in the agent details usually is, well, the listings that I'm familiar with looking at, that has an energy efficient line.
Yeah.
And then
That's true.
you can say, see comments or something, and you can attach a document, associated documents.
Yeah.
Or you could put it in your listing details, hey, I have new windows,
Mhm.
I have new, owned solar, or whatever it is you want to brag
That's
about.
true. Because you can
And
upload
value.
documents of whatever you want, so you can write something.
Well, are you gonna put value, you're gonna put cost?
I tell them to put how much it cost the
Yeah.
homeowner, how much they invested for all those things, and put that in associated docs. So all your upgrades, and then how much they paid for them, and then you'll have to figure out if it's still valuable.
And in solar, it's a depreciating asset, right? I mean, those things go bad, they get less efficient with time. And so you want to say, hey, I got an 18-month-old solar that's got 36 panels. It's a 6 kilowatt system that costs $48,000.
You can combat that with what you just said by saying, this thing's
Savings
cost
still.
savings is $280 a month
Right, and so then all we do is,
in August.
yeah, right.
So then would you want to see like the old electric bills versus the new?
I don't
ones?
need to see, I
Just
just,
the number.
somebody to tell me they know. I can trust people technically.
Well, we're supposed to be honest. you
You're
know?
supposed to be honest.
You shouldn't be lying in
If
first place.
someone asks, we have to have the proof.
So,
You can't lie.
But I would, but I would cite homeowners or site agents or something like that, say.
So we should kind of collect that information, even if they have like, let's say, energy efficient appliances that they just bought brand new appliances and,
Anything new like that, because remember, if we have average, like your scenario with this, with the traffic.
Mhm.
I got average, and then all of a sudden I got this comp at 380 or 390 that sold because it had new appliances and new flooring and whatever they had that was new. That's just information for me. If all of a sudden the median is 350 and I'm appraising at 390, that's helpful information for me.
Yeah,
Is to say, okay, we're above predominant, which I'm required to say,
yeah.
and we're above predominant because new windows, new flooring, new appliances, new quartz countertops,
We see.
new AC. The bigger that list is, the more when I sit in front of the board,
Yeah.
I can say, hey, I do this. And then it also allows me then to go cherry pick comparables. It's like I got challenged. Why didn't you use this comparable and that comparable and that comparable? Well, because I had a pool in an outdoor storage area with a half bath, all permitted, and it was really nice. These houses had none of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to use those, even though they indicate lower and they're recent and in the same model. Sorry,
So if
I'm going to another neighborhood with a pool
It's just making me think about everything.
and all this stuff.
I'm just like, so if they've added, a pool house or whatever, or an extension. And, some places they don't have the permits or whatever for it, it's just there. But if they do, we should even maybe send you the permits for it too, or even put them in the listing for saying that it's.
Talk about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's trust. I really don't want a fatter file than I already have.
Well, just let you know about it. at
Yeah,
least. Okay.
but if push came to shove, hopefully I make a note.
Yeah.
The permit's available upon request or whatever I want
Yeah.
to put. And then I could go back to you and say, hey, could you dig through your file and find the permits that you found or whatever for that? Because I'm going in front of the board for that appraisal where I made your deal and you were really happy about it. And now I'm getting cooked for this. And so I need help. And so I guess if I wanted, I could load all that stuff in my file.
Yeah.
But if I have access to it, the risk I guess I would be taking is that you're going, I'm not making money as a realtor, I'm out of the business, I'm,
Yeah,
doing whatever.
but the brokerage should have the
They
document.
should have it too.
Right, they gotta keep it.
Somehow I could get to it.
Yeah.
But that communicating that with me, especially if you've got a house that's loaded with preference items, that's what I call them,
Yeah.
upgrades and things. Hey, these people spent 140 grand in the last 6 months getting this house ready to sell on all these items.
I'm taking a listing right now
That's
with a
gold.
noise factor, and I know it's gonna be a noise factor.
And they mitigated it with new windows.
Windows, roof, pool has been redone, flooring, kitchen, bathrooms, all of it's been upgraded within the last 2 years.
Yeah,
So I've gotta combat that noise, cause it's extremely loud.
What is
I
it?
need to go out to a deaf community and ask them to be VIPs at my open house.
What is it from? What's the noise from?
Cars.
Oh, it's like right next to
They
a
built tilt-up concrete buildings across the street
So-
Oh,
it
in a
echoes off of
beautiful
that.
neighborhood in Gilbert. I mean,
it makes super loud. but
it just bounces off that, comes right, and their house is right on the corner, right there. It's extremely loud.
Well, see, that's one where, what you're hoping to is
Bring a
go
working band to your open
from
house.
10% to.
Right? So people don't hear.
Stuff.
You wouldn't hear it
Play some loud music.
Yeah,
that loud. I mean, it's 7 AM and it's, if they come, the appraiser comes at 5:30 in the afternoon, I'm screwed. I mean, it's gonna be a drag race, and you hear Harleys down the street, and it's unbelievable.
sometimes it is what it is.
It is what it
Is it true?
So I've gotta combat that with everything that I'm putting into this list.
Yeah.
Knew this, knew that, knew everything.
New doorknobs.
Giving a break to the deaf community, come in, buying down the rate, doing everything. And we are. But I do have some higher comps in the area
Oh, yeah, you say,
that have recently sold, but it was this summer. So I'm hoping to get it,
yeah. No, you can, I mean,
as does the seller. So, but I've got,
They might need that.
I gotta compete with other buyers and other agents and let them know what I know.
Yeah.
So I'm putting it all out on the wall. This is what we put on, this is what we bought. This is what we're.
It's a good idea.
Brand
For an
new.
open house, yeah.
Open house is gonna be loaded.
Put stickers on everything.
Stickers,
Stickers that says
this
view.
costs this costs that. I gotta load it up and then hopefully, the appraisal comes through.
just make sure, yeah, the more you communicate, all that positive stuff to the appraiser. Here was my thinking. I know the traffic's an issue, but we have all this stuff. And I think
Yeah.
in the aggregate, it looks like it kind of offset. And so somebody was willing to live with the traffic if they could have all these amenities
Yeah,
and,
then it's worth.
and it worked. I got an offer in 2 weeks. And I got a bunch of showings. And so that's helpful. Cause I'm gonna look at it and go, holy crap, I can't hear myself think out here. I would never buy this. Well, that doesn't matter. It's what will the market do?
Yeah,
And somebody's gonna go, well, in exchange for all the amenities, I'll put up with the traffic.
yeah.
And it could be a deaf person who comes and said, I can't hear anyway, so,
So with windows, because when you're in Phoenix or you're in Scottsdale and you're showing houses and stuff, and the people have never changed their window. I feel like no one ever changes their windows. Like no one ever updates them. But how much, or sometimes I'll have sellers that are like, oh, like we want to do these things, like we want to do the windows, this and that. Is it like, how much is it generally worth it? Is it like, you're gonna get your money back or even and then some by updating windows? Because I feel like no one in Arizona ever updates their windows.
I think Remodeling Magazine had it, and those were lower, maybe 60% or something like that. Whereas a kitchen or a bath remodel
Yeah,
are like 90%, somewhere in
Okay.
there. So of
that'd be
things
the
that,
last thing you spend your money on.
well, it doesn't make any sense because I talk to people who redo their windows. And then it cuts down on dust, it cuts down on noise, quality of life is better, they all love them. But then when you get people, I need you to pay for these windows, we spent $35 grand on Pella windows. And so, and they're going, well, that's nice, but no. And,
Or Anderson or whatever.
oh, yeah, yeah.
I like them when they like open out where you do the.
Oh,
I
the-
think
Right.
those are
Like
more,
right.
yeah, they're
Right.
great ones.
Cute.
Those look so
Yeah,
much better
usually
when they're
they're-
colored or.
Aluminum clad on the outside and a wood sash on the inside. And those are big bucks. I mean, window budgets are, they go from very little
Yeah.
to incredible.
You can go through the list of a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I find that the market's not crazy about paying.
Plantation shutters, window treatments, are those?
Yeah.
Everybody says that.
Oh,
Like, it's-
yeah,
it's-
plantation shutters are interesting. It's the only window covering that's really real property.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Like
all
it's
these,
just a
Oh,
fix
yeah,
to the
that's
property.
true.
yeah, because all the
Yeah.
fancy silhouettes and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Even though they always stay with the
They,
property,
yeah, for sure.
I'm not supposed to value them
Oh, really?
because they're personal property. Interesting. Doesn't make any sense because you can spend a ton.
Yes, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
What about,
Yeah. That customer could have spent a gazillion dollars.
And you can still brag about it in your listing.
Okay,
It's just,
but you just,
be aware, I may not
Yeah.
give it a lot of value.
yeah, you can't value it, so what, I don't know.
But quite frankly, I think it's a little bit like concessions we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Is, okay, everybody pays 2.5%. A lot of times, I mean, I find that normal. If the seller participates to the tune of about 2 to 3%, that's normal. It seems like that happens in almost all transactions. That they pay part of closing, they pay,
Yeah.
this or that or the other thing, and it usually comes out to 2 or 3%. If all of a sudden, they're paying a lot more, and it's, if you pay a lot more because of the window coverings, yours are just crazy. Somebody paid an insane amount of money for the house because of the window covering. You're probably going to have troubles. If everybody has the same window coverings, basically, I see a comp sale and it has window coverings on it. I'm not discounting that sale saying,
Yeah.
hey, they paid, $5,000 too much for it because it had window coverage. It's kind of one of those accepted things in the market. Just like maybe 2 or 3% of participation by the seller
Yeah.
is normal. It's when you jump that up by 5 or 10%, or that big huge buy down, all I'm gonna say is you didn't really sell that for 500,000 with a $40,000 interest rate buy down. You really sold the house for 460,000.
So how much does that like affect? Because normally, like right now, a lot of times when we're,
Your house, none.
well,
I mean, if you're selling it with a big concession,
yeah,
I don't care what your concession
because
was.
a lot of times we're telling sellers like, oh, instead of necessarily lowering the price, let's offer, $10,000, $20,000
Yeah.
to help buy down their rate. How much does that affect when you guys are going to do the appraisal? Because you're like, yes, I get that you guys are, they're coming in with a full price offer, but that valuation does not sustain itself if that concession isn't there, you know what I mean? And I don't know how the concession on your side affects the value
So here's,
necessarily, or you guys basically don't consider it, you just consider whatever the price is that you have it listed as and it's under contract for, kind of thing.
so here's what I look at: you and your listing, and then the contract says $40,000 from the seller to the buyer, or whatever, interest rate buy down, whatever else,
Yeah,
for all these repairs or whatever that are going to be done after closing.
yeah,
And so so I'm suspicious. So I'm gonna try and did it really sell for the list price, or could they have sold it without all those concessions? That's the question I'm asking myself.
yeah,
Could they have sold it for the full price?
I see.
It was there for 4 months.
Mhm.
I don't see any indication on the listing that it was ever under contract and it went south for
Yeah.
one reason or the other. They're just, you didn't, or, drop. So I'm a little bit of an investigator that way. I'm looking. And then I'm going, okay, might ask you about it to say, hey, what's going on? And then it's either come to Jesus meeting where you're, willing to be honest, or
Yeah,
not. And then it's, for me to determine what's real. Where it really creates the interesting problem though, is a couple months later when I use it as a comp.
yeah, I guess that's true.
And so it sold for 500, but it had this $50,000 altogether in concessions. If I don't catch that, then I'm in trouble. And FHA will call you out all day
So I'm
long.
assuming when you go in there, because you can see when the person closes out their listing and they put in the concessions that they paid or whatever. You can see that when you're
Yep.
doing a new one and you're like, okay,
Yep.
this really, yeah, it says 550, but it's actually, only 500.
Yeah, because of this huge interest rate buy down. And so, and on your, I think I gave it to you on a handout, there is a line right towards the top of the grid page. This is what I call the grid. Right up towards the top, and it says concessions.
Okay.
And so I have to list it on my comps.
So for each one of the comps.
For each one of the comps. And that's really, at the end of the day, if you had your 550 sale and you had included $50,000 in concessions, your inclination would be that it was really a $50,000 sale. I mean, a $500,000
Yeah.
sale. But what if all my data now supports 550?
Yeah, I guess it's true.
Then it's
Because
550.
everybody else that have sold it for 550 and gave a ton of concessions, and
Yeah.
I guess it's 550.
Yeah, I mean,
So I
you
guess
never
it makes
know
sense.
when the owner, like the buyers,
Yeah.
I've seen that happen a lot of times where some older couple really kind of likes the new family with the baby and the dog, and they want to help them out. I want to sell it to them. They may not qualify.
Yeah.
Well, what can we do to help? You just met them. I don't care. I want to help. And so they help. And so that situation's real and it happens. And so it's, just because I saw a concession on your deal doesn't mean that it wasn't worth the full sales price.
Okay.
But I'm asking questions.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. This one, I'm just feeling, what do we got? I don't want to go over.
15 minutes.
Okay,
I have one question.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's kind of on my own house, and I was just kind of wondering how you would look at this. Because I know we refinanced it and all the comparables didn't have a pool. And we have quite a nice large pool, diving pool. And we put in like 100,000 into the house. For instance, all new decking, which was 10,000. 2 furnaces for the pool, 1 gas, 1 solar. Which that was about 15,000. Solar panels that runs the pool heat and the house pay. That was like 49,000. New windows, I think we're like 35, 40. I'm just kind of going, okay. We're in a neighborhood that's about 35 years old. And as you drive down the street, you can see the old windows had a crisscross design in them. And so like about half of them are redone. But anyway, if you kind of look, I have just a little over probably 100,000 of upgrades in. What percentage of that would an appraiser put on the value of the base house?
So just as a general rule, not necessarily true, but generally you're going to take a bath on the solar most of the times. So if you pay 50 for the solar, maybe you get 20 back.
Not 50. I don't think it was that much. I think it was like 30. But
okay, well, whichever the case is, usually solar doesn't. You don't usually recapture a good portion of the investment in solar. And again, age and all that stuff matters for that. On the pool side, the cool things you did with the deck and the pool and all that, again, it's really great, but you're probably gonna recapture a portion of it or a fraction of it instead of a multiple of it. And so both those things, I would say you've got you kind of when you go to resell it, or when I come to value it, it's lost the new car smell and it's been driven off the lot and the value's dropped the minute that construction stopped on all of that stuff. But they're both worth a lot, but you gotta be careful about equating cost with value. On that, and I don't know if this is the rest of your house, but it's something that's a concept that's important, is the more upgraded or embellished a house is for the neighborhood and for that given footprint or size of the house, it seems like each additional dollar is going to return less money, because you're bumping up into the ceiling of price expectations for that particular neighborhood. And so you keep adding and adding and adding and adding, and it's all really cool stuff. But it's like, well, if I wanted to pay that much, I would have gone to a different neighborhood.
Yeah.
So
Instead of
that where they
paying that.
say you don't want to be the most expensive house
Yeah,
in the neighborhood, or the least expensive, you want to be right kind of in the middle.
there's a little bit of that, but
You know,
I don't think.
that's interesting that you say that, because before we did some of this, we went to try to find another house in another neighborhood, and
Yeah.
could not even come close to our backyard. The newer things are, shallow pools, small. Ours is quite large. It's a diving pool. I mean, you just the space.
No,
Yeah, it just, it didn't make sense to us anyway.
So well, I guess if I was appraising your house, I might be exactly the same value conclusion, but what I would hope to do is have one or two comparables that had a really nice backyard, because it sounds like that's really important and that it's really nice. So to not have a pool as a comp is a dangerous practice.
Yeah.
For that other appraisal, or for just valuing it, whether you're the realtor or not. You'd wanna find something, and that's one of those deals where you go, hey, this is a oasis in the desert, so I'm gonna go outside my normal parameters. I'm gonna go back in time for the same rule.
Yeah.
Is I want to match them. But it's really interesting. In Yuma, Arizona, I appraised a house. No, I used it as a comp. Sorry, long time ago. And they had this backyard. It was in Mesa del Sol, and it faced west. But they had put a couple $100,000 of cactus, cacti, in their backyard, and it was incredible. It was like going to in Tucson we have the Desert Museum, but whatever botanical garden we have, and it didn't add a dime.
Oh my gosh!
Because the maintenance required
to
keep the backyard up was incredible. And so they kept waiting for, the gardener to come by the house. But the gardener never came, and they ended up selling the house for basically what another house with just a decomposed granite backyard, with a single mesquite tree sold for. And for me, it was difficult because it appeals to me.
Yeah.
Gardening's kind of something I like. But so be careful about that, because that can happen.
Overall, it sounds like, though, Leslie, we need to come to your house and go swimming.
Yeah.
We need to party.
Yes.
I mean,
I
we
just want to have a party in it next weekend.
you're welcome anytime.
I stepped out for a second. I don't know if you guys addressed this. Stucco, paint, re-roofing prior to putting the solar panels, or the age of the roof.
Answer all these questions right now.
Age of the roof, it's been replaced. They checked it out before they put the solar on. When we bought it, is recently painted. Kitchen has been all remodeled, but the floor plan has a master on the main floor. It's a 2-story. But the lot is a corner lot. It's quite large, and then we bought it for the backyard. It has a nice shape, big diving pool.
Leslie, we're gonna list your property right now.
I know, we're gonna tell it.
It has a
Talking about what Leslie's
gazebo.
talking about, because she did a refi Are refis generally looked at differently than a normal sale? So like, cause when, if I go run a comp as if I were to sell my house today to get the value of what I think, my refi should be. And then, if I'm getting cash out or whatever it may be, are they looking at that as, well, we're not looking at it as you're gonna sell it because you're not, so we're actually gonna value it this way.
So the definition of value comes from Fannie Mae.
Okay.
And it's gonna be the same, whether it's a purchase,
Okay.
refi, a HELOC, whatever, cash out refi, all those things should be the same, whether it's basically an estate or a divorce settlement, they're all asking for market value and pretty much, there are other definitions of value. But the one that's promulgated by Fannie Mae is the one that's used way, it's the monster. It's the one that's used. Sometimes there's distress sales and there's different things.
Yeah.
Different definitions for that. So yeah, it should be the same. I guess the reality of it though is in a purchase transaction, you have a buyer who's trying to drive the price down.
Yeah.
And you have a seller who's trying to drive the price up. So you have opposing forces.
Yeah.
In a refi, everybody's hoping for a big number.
Yeah.
The homeowner, the lender, everybody's pushing up.
Yeah.
And so, but it's the same, it should be this identical
Okay.
conclusion.
Because I was wondering that, I wonder if it's a refi, they go, oh, we value this a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Or something like
Yeah.
that, but no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So getting back to the condition, so like the roofing, and the reason I bring this up was for like the paint, the stucco, the roofing before solar. I try to tell people now before you put the solar on, have your roof redone because you're not going to want to move those and then redo it. But in the earlier class, Doug was talking about, or no, was it Doug or was it who was it talking about the property that you guys backed out of because there was some issues around the flat roof? Maybe it was Evo.
Yeah, it could have been.
But it was like, it was a condition that looked bad and it was a mobile home and it was
Gable end roof and another part or an add-on butted to it.
Yeah.
The roof system did not tie in together, which looked funky to him. He put out a roofer or a contractor to tell you to look at it. And
my first inclination when he was talking about that was to call you, send you a picture and say, what do you do when you see this? Because I know you guys are looking at some conditions now.
Yeah, and so on roofs, electrical, plumbing, remember, I'm basically superficial in my inspection requirements. I'm not, it used to be I'd check polarity on outlets. You have these little deals you can plug in and it'll light up the right color if it's good and red if it's not, and do all that stuff. Now they say what's visibly obvious. And so that's kind of where mine ends. And so if I saw a roof like that and say you're communicating with me saying, hey, I'm not sure about this roof, because I could walk by it and not see it, and you don't want me to do that. I mean, hopefully I see it, but I mean, it's always helped to point stuff out that's important. I defer to a qualified third party.
Oh, okay.
And so, because I'm not a roofing expert, and I'm not a plumbing or electrical expert, I think I can see stuff that's really funky. And so usually what I'll do is I'll say, hey, this is atypical. And so I would like, you need to engage. So when I'm making appraisals subject to repairs,
Right.
I can make it subject to an inspection.
Okay.
It's another box I can check.
So if that inspector then says, oh, you need this to be remedied, it's going to cost this much, unless that's done and that can hold up that
Yeah,
appraisal.
and my appraisal's not valid because I've checked that subject to box. So this is all contingent upon the findings of this third party expert. And I just did one like that where it was a territorial style adobe house, and there was a crack running down all the way through the blocks, which is always a bad sign. It can follow the grout, that's one thing, but if it goes through a block, that's another thing. And so I said, I don't know if this is a
structural or not.
Structural, I don't know if it's a, you can have, what are they hydro grout for foundation repairs. I mean, if you can get away with that for 30 grand, you're lucky. And so it's on one wall. If you do a house, I mean, you're talking about big bills.
Is
The
that
fix-
insurance usually covers that or no?
Maybe homeowners would,
Okay.
but if you're in a purchase transaction and nobody disclosed and nobody asked a question about it, and it goes back to CYA, I'm trying to say, hey, I'm engaging, I don't know the answer to this. So I'm gonna get us, you need to get a qualified third party
Yes.
to go out there and do that and look. And because I don't know, what if I just say, hey, that's a $5,000 repair and it comes back and it's 65 grand?
Yeah.
So you don't do that. You say this appraisal is contingent upon inspection and the findings from a qualified third party expert. And then they can wrestle with that however they want.
Did I think I did call you on this Glendale property. It was you just jogged my memory. It was stone, it was like a 1940s house, it was a stone house, but in the back was a cedar shed. And the appraiser called for it to be painted. And I'm like, it's cedar, like it's beautiful wood. And they're like, nope, it has to be painted. You couldn't have raw wood. What's that rule?
So that's FHA.
Okay. Yeah,
Any bare wood exposed to weather needs to be covered.
Bare, chipped, anything.
Yep. So it needs, if it's chipped, scrape it and paint it.
Yep.
If it's just bare, just paint it. But it needs to be covered and protected from the weather. That's FHA standard. A sealer.
Mhm.
It would seem like it seems like a clear Thompson's type water seal
That's what I
would
thought.
work because then you can preserve the aesthetic
Yeah.
of the cedar.
Of the look.
Yeah, and save the can.
Yeah.
Say this looks like raw wood, but it's cedar.
It's there by the wall.
It's made to be
I was
outside.
so afraid that it wasn't gonna work because it was so porous. I'm like, you're gonna throw gallons on it. It's not gonna look like anything was done to
It
it.
didn't
But
take a lot.
it did finally work and they made it.
That would
happen.
be-
I gotta paint my cinder block fence, because my HOA wants me to. I'm like, this is gonna suck up paint, it's gonna take me, $200 to paint this stupid thing.
Stucco it and then paint it if you can. Looks
I'd have to
like
go
that.
and get it approved.
Yeah,
But anyway,
that's so interesting to me.
if you leave the can, I can take a picture of the can,
Oh, yeah.
put it in my report. Here's what
Interesting.
they covered. Here's what they used. Says it's weatherproof. That's what we're after, is weatherproof.
Yeah.
And should be good to go. Not to say that there's probably a lot of appraisers who are gonna go, yeah, no, I want an opaque,
Yeah.
stain or paint or
Yeah,
something.
So no one can say anything about mine.
Yeah.
So your chipped paint, still red flags, your
Absolutely.
flag that, and your multiple layers of roofing, what's the numbers?
Three, beyond three, the third one's okay, but the fourth one's not.
Say 3 to the max.
Yeah, it's starting to get, weight.
It's getting to be that bad too. They're going the same way. They're covering their veteran.
Watch, down the discharge, the down pipes for the TPR valve on
yeah.
the water heaters for FHA.
Oh.
I
The
tried to,
staining, you mean on the stucco?
no, water heater, has a valve on the top or on the side.
So the leaf valve
It's
should go
temperature
through the
pressure
wall.
relief valve.
Right.
Yes.
And it needs to vent down to within 6 inches of the ground. Maybe your code's different here, but I don't think it is. Or it needs to go into a drain,
Yeah,
or it needs to go outside,
Yeah.
so that if the water heater malfunctions and somebody's sniffing around out there because the water heater's not working right, and that valve pops and hot water blows all over them, they're gonna
Yeah.
get burned. So FHA is pretty strict about
Yeah,
that.
they want the long.
And it's $5.
It's super cheap. Yeah.
But if you have me come back out there, they're gonna charge you $200 for me to come back, and it slows your deal down, right? It delays closing, and it costs extra money.
Speaking of the different cities though and codes, you're right, because I remember Somerton, which is like a small little border town outside of Yuma area, what was it called at the edge of the drip, not the drip, yeah, the drip.
Drip edge on the house.
Yes, the drip edge. They didn't require it down there. My buyers red flagged it and they're like, hey, it's missing the drip edge. We looked, none of the houses had them. So the metal drip edge in the Somerton, which is still Yuma County, but that city didn't require it with their construction.
Yeah,
And so it was just a little wood trim.
right.
Here a lot, you see, it's really nice. You'll have the, it's like, what do you see? The tile roofing, and then it'll have,
It'll have the drip edge underneath the tile.
yeah, but it's super, super clean and it's all just like I don't know, I can't even, I'm trying to think of it, because I see it out at Sun City Grand all the time. It's really clean. It doesn't look like it has a drip edge at all, but it's like stuccoed is what it is, isn't it? It's got the layers of stucco underneath the,
You tell me if ever applied or seen drip edge, it's been where it is the drip edge. That it comes out,
But
protrudes the wall.
it brings up a point though, is FHA defers to the local building authority.
okay,
On lots of stuff. And so if you know what you're selling and you know the
looks like just stucco.
code in the area, that can save you some work.
They also,
Yeah, it
the
doesn't have a thing.
other house there, the other house there, the other, was that got it on it? That's got it on?
That's
Yeah.
nice.
He's got it, your neighbor's got it, you gotta have it.
That's
And
nice.
it's just to get it inspected.
The house.
Uh,
Oh, I believe.
Hey
So,
Jeff, I
hey,
have a
what-
question.
sure, go ahead.
So my name's Jacqueline, I'm with Barrett Financial. And my question is how come you guys on FHA and conventional don't have the same guidelines as VA when it comes to Tidewater?
Oh, well,
Sorry, my dog has value.
no. You know, I know I'm not VA.
Do you do
certified.
VA or you don't do VA?
I do not do VA, but I know about it. You know, I know the chief appraiser for VA. And so, they just haven't adopted that. I think it's a really great thing, actually. Tidewater to say, oops, we did our initial search, we're struggling. Doesn't look like we're gonna be able to support, give me some help. I think it's a good idea, but we don't do it. And I don't know why they don't do it, FHA or conventional, but they don't do it. Now,
I just think it would solve a lot of problems because I mean, at least because most people that do, VA loans or agents that represent veterans, that they know that when it's a Tidewater, they have 72 hours, they get with the listing agent, they give us what we need. And I just think it solves the problem of, having low appraisals.
so I think though, in the meantime, though, when that doesn't exist, I mean, we can wish for
Right.
it, but it's not there. That's where you gotta anticipate. And say, hey, when I priced this, it was difficult. I had to be creative. I had to do this and that. It's defensible. It makes sense. And the market responded to it and I sold the house.
Right.
You've got to, because Tidewater doesn't exist on FHA, assume the appraiser's lazy. I mean, I don't.
Probably true, yeah. Give
I
them
don't
as much
wanna
info as possible.
I don't want to say we are, but everybody can have their bad day. And so, and if you're really farming an area and you're super expert in that, you probably understand the area better than an appraiser who's covering a much larger geographic area.
Yeah.
And so I would say anticipate and try and hit that on the front end rather than dealing with it on the back end. I mean, that's the best I can do. I agree with you. It's a great rule, but we don't have it. And so just, if it's not absolutely cookie cutter, and you had to go outside the box and how you priced the thing and how you sold the thing, share that. And appraisers are an old group, really. And they're an opinionated group because they get paid to render their opinion all the time. So they can be a crotchety, ill-tempered group. And so I would say to, present good information in a deferential way and try and build camaraderie instead of saying, don't say upfront, hey, idiot, if you would do your job in the first place. Yeah, I mean, whatever you can do to do that is going to help you. And it's a great question. And I've seen a Tidewater abused. I've heard from lenders who go, this really stinks because I work in some underserved markets. And appraisers come in there because they're jonesing for work because it's not in their normal, area. And they say Tidewater before they do anything, just so they can get comps out of the realtors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I know of one who's being challenged and being asked to be taken off the VA panel because that was their pattern. And so there is some downside, but hopefully what you can do is just kind of anticipate any odd things about your property and figure out a way to share it and get it to the appraiser most of the time, that's when we call for appointments or email for appointments or text for appointments.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I've left some documentation that was really interesting because this one's gonna
You
be
can leave it at that.
interesting for you.
Yeah.
And so if you can use it, use it. And
Would you say a good portion of appraisals that you've done that listing agents and or buyer's agents have left you a packet or emailed you comps was better in aiding in value, or it doesn't help at all?
I would say it's always helpful because it helps me to see how you guys think.
Right.
And you guys are important players in
So
the
then
market.
when you see it and then you're like, wow, this guy's stupid.
Well, sometimes that's the result. And sometimes I can see where you've really stretched to get to someplace. And there's other times it's really cool because we've pulled the same information. And so it's confirming to me, sometimes in the positive and in the negative, where I'm saying, okay, well, that really works. Because one, hopefully, I can't say I do this all the time, but maybe you could invite your participation into the appraisal process by saying, if you have any problems, call me, and I'll be of whatever assistance I can. I try to do that when I'm killing a deal. I know it's important to everybody, and so if I don't have just perfect information and I'm struggling because it's a tough appraisal, it's a tough property, I'll call and say, where on earth did you find support for your list price?
Yeah.
What did you do? And so I don't do that every time. When I've got a wonderful appraisal, you just found some sucker. I mean, that's just the way it is. But a lot of times, maybe what you could do in place of Tidewater is to kind of invite that attitude from the appraiser that, hey, I'm here to help. I'm getting paid to transact this property. And so if you're struggling with anything, or if there's any things you have questions on, call me. I've got my cell phone with me all the time. Maybe that would help. One thing that I'll say that I see where appraisers are different than realtors a lot of times is you guys will check you guys use a lot of square price per foot in your valuation models. And so I don't do that a lot of times just because of the inverse relationship between the size of the house and the price per foot. So when I know you guys are really working to get to a price, I see you use houses that are way smaller and that are priced at $375 a foot. And we're appraising a house that's much bigger. And those bigger houses are priced at $325.
Right.
And so what you do is you just carry that price per foot to the larger home.
Yeah.
And I usually say, nice try. And sometimes, lo and behold, it works. There's this huge band of values in the neighborhood, and it will support a high value. But most of the times, you'll see the smaller homes with the higher price per foot and the larger homes. And all of us optimists want to use the smaller homes and just translate it directly to the larger homes. And it's a fallacy.
What?
And go ahead.
What scale do you use for the difference of like 200 square feet in a house? Is there a rule for that?
Well, I'm just going to get to that. There's an appraiser named Ratterman. I think he's even from Phoenix. He's written a lot of books. And so if it's a $200 a foot neighborhood, it seems logical I would use $200 a foot to do that. But I'll probably use about $100 a foot. And the reason why is the lot has not changed. So you got to back the lot value out of the equation. The kitchen, we still got one nice gourmet kitchen. So you back the most expensive room in the house out of the equation. And it's still only got 3 baths or 2 baths, whatever it is. And so you back the bathrooms out. So really what I'm adjusting for when I'm adjusting for square footage is pretty much the shell.
Yeah.
The flooring, the walls, the roof.
Including the garage or no?
No,
No. So
no. Which is another FHA and appraisal, our standards are that, if you can't get to it from the primary dwelling, it's not part of the gross living area of the house. And conventional now says I have to follow ANSI standards, American National Standards Institute. And so the garage isn't included, the porches aren't included, and the in-laws quarters that's detached or that you have to go through the garage to get to it,
That's not great.
not included.
Interesting.
But if there's a door that takes me directly into the house from it, it's
It
included.
is, okay.
If it's below grade, be careful of that, guys. If any part of the house is below grade, I'm not supposed to include it in the GLA. So walkout basement, in Tucson, it's more common than here,
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because I have a lot of hillside stuff.
Oh,
1 story in the front, this immense 2-story in the back. Holy cow, and the whole downstairs, I'm not supposed to include.
oh, wow.
Chris, as part of the house,
There's some of
It'll
those
be its
in-
own
in
line.
Glendale, there's some.
Yeah. they should be valued, right? They have a lot of value, maybe at the same rate as the house, but it'll be on a different line.
Okay, I see.
So I want to know what address it or what neighborhood it is. I don't remember that.
There's some literally right.
It's like Cresta Gila in
Yeah, some of the
Okay.
original neighborhoods that they like subdivisions they built in Glendale.
Huh.
Yeah.
They're like that.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, and you guys can do whatever you do. I don't know what your restraints are, but just remember, if I go out there and appraise it, your 3,800 square foot house with, 1,800 square feet that are partially below grade,
Yeah.
it may be, I may have to call it an 1,800. 2,000 house with an 1,800 square
Realize
foot.
that.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So, anyway,
Thank you.
yeah,
Awesome.
I like the measurements.
I put, for people on Zoom, if you look in the chat, I put Jeff's info. So his name, phone number, email is in there. I added the documents, the handouts that he gave us today into the library in Brockerman under class handouts, so look in there.
Cool.
And then, yeah, we'll, do you have more business cards?
I've got to
I'll put some of these in the office. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
work
those
too.
are great.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I didn't, yeah,
We have a thing.
I forgot it in my car. So,
Thank you so much for coming down.
oh, you're welcome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, guys, people on Zoom, just so you guys know, Friday, Christmas party here, 4 o'clock to 6. Also, we're doing a toy drive. Toys need to be here by the 12th, right? Yeah, the 12th, unwrapped.
Yep.
And, but yeah, come in and drop them off in the office by the Christmas tree, or you can come in and grab a little thing off the Christmas tree. And then you can, get a specific toy if you want to do that too, so.
And we're doing a white elephant gift exchange at the party and the saran wrap game.
Oh, yes, we're doing all of that, so.
You want to come, Jeff?
I don't think so.
It's Friday at 4.
Alrighty, guys, see you later.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, yeah.
Appreciate it.